Hello and welcome to another edition of Reminiscences. This time we are in Lagos in the book field study of a legal luminary, Alhaji Abdullateef Olufemi Okunu, son, I should add, who has been practicing law. He's been a lawyer for the last 60 years. Of course, he has done many other things along the way, including, many will remember, the Federal Commissioner, which is the equivalent of minister these days, of Works and Housing between 1967 and I believe 1974 under the Gowon administration. Sir, I want to welcome you to this program and thank you for giving us this audience.
You're welcome.
And I like to start straight away by saying law defines you. Everybody knows you with law. But it seems law was competing with something else when you are younger. You from your biography, it seemed history was another. You would have loved to be a professor of history rather than a senior advocate. How did law win over history?
That's very interesting. My first love was to be a historian. I'm still a historian. But I also wanted to play a part in public life. I developed interest in politics rather very young. My father bought the newspapers of the day, in those days. West African Pilot, Daily Service. So my interest in history then conflicted with the type of life I wanted for myself in future to play a role in public life. As I've said, youngsters like me in those days, we loved reading the newspapers published in Lagos and also follow the political trends. I used to watch the LEGCO, Legislative Council sessions under the Richards Constitution in the late 40s. I was transiting from primary school to secondary school at the period. I used to watch them at LEGCO Council at the old secretariat at Marina. And the leading figures in those days were the chief secretary to the government. That was Foot, one of the Foot brothers. There were about 3 or 4 of them.
This is
famous.
He was British,
in
right?
And the one who chose public service became the chief secretary to the government, the governor. And the governor was Sir Arthur Richards, the author of the 1946 Constitution. So that's why I finally landed in Inns of Court to do law.
Was it difficult to go to England for a young man of your, or because you are privileged enough, you could easily go and study law in England?
That's a very interesting question. There were 3 British colonies in modern day Nigeria. The first colony was Lagos Colony, which British established in 1861. The other 2 colonies were established on the first day of January 1900. That's the Protectorate of Northern Nigeria and the Protectorate of Southern Nigeria. People misunderstand the place of Lagos, and Lagos State as it is today. It's the same as Lagos Colony in area. Right. Now, so there were 3 colonies. I was born in Lagos. As someone born in Lagos and within Lagos Colony, I was a British citizen with all the rights to vote and be voted for in England until 30th September 1959. But those who were born in the Northern Protectorate or Southern Protectorate were British protected persons. They were not British citizens. They had to apply for visa to travel to Britain. I didn't need to. I could go anywhere, and I did go to many countries in Europe without a visa because I was a British citizen. So going to study in England was like what the West Indian used to call going to the motherland.
But still, were you treated as a black man, discriminated against? Did you have to go through that before you could? And how did you cope?
Oh yes. Now look, I experienced a few times this discrimination against the blacks. If you are looking for, and at that time once or twice I was looking for a new digs,
new accommodation, yes.
And you will knock at the main door. You had seen a notice maybe at a tobacconist in the area of accommodation available at so-and-so number, so-and-so street. I get there and you knock. And when the landlady opened the door and saw a black face, they say, no accommodation. Bam. I experienced that one maybe 2 or 3 times. But you take it with a plum. It was part of British life in those days. It's gone down considerably now, but in those days, in the 50s when I went, early 50s, discrimination was still at its height.
Yet, when you came back to Nigeria in 1960 with a law degree, you didn't go into politics. It seemed you went into private practice first.
Not quite. I went into private practice. I came back in September, just before independence. I was part of the body which organized the independence celebration in London. So the past officers of the union in London, when we, in 1960, 61, we then gathered together to form the Nigerian Youth Congress.
Okay.
I remember that the Youth Congress was quite a thorn in the flesh of Baliwa's government.
To us.
Because we, as we did in London, organizing demonstrations against the visit of Nigerian leaders in 1958 to London for another constitutional conference. Our own view was that the leaders should stay in Lagos or in Nigeria to draft and agree on their constitution, instead of about 100 delegates representing the Northern People's Party, the Action Group led by Chief Awolowo, NCNC led by Zik, NEPO, my great friend, led by my great friend Aminu Kanu, older than me in distance, but very close friend. I was his lawyer. I was NEPO lawyer in those days when I returned. And they all anyway were in London, over 100 of them. And as students, we said they should have stayed in Lagos to save taxpayers' money. Let me just add this also. That was the Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact.
62.
No. 60. The document was signed by all our leaders for the establishment of British military in Kano. Staging point. All of them signed it. Zik did, the Southerner did, Awolowo did, all of them signed it. Until recently, I didn't disclose who told me about the pact. But the person who told me about the pact was my good friend, elder friend, Malam Aminu Kano, that they signed a secret treaty that's between Britain and the colony, Nigeria colony, to station the British soldiers in Nigeria. And a long story, we didn't like it at all. We staged a public demonstration in London. I organized on behalf of the Nigerian Youth Congress in Lagos another massive demonstration against the Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact until the government revoked the secret military pact with Britain. We didn't want any British soldiers on our soil independent. And you see what's happening in French-speaking Africa today with French soldiers all over the place.
But here you were, after all this activism, and later on, of course, the government collapsed, the military came in. And here you are now moving into the establishment as a minister. How did that happen? Why were you at all made a minister?
Well,
in 67.
Now, General Gawan, at that time, Lieutenant Colonel Gawan, of course, appointed his own military governors. Hassan Katsina in the north, Fajui in the east, Ojukwu in the west, and Ejo in the Bender State. The country was moving into chaos. One of the first steps he took was to appoint the ad hoc constitutional conference of leaders from various parts of the country. 5 from each region, 5 delegates, 5 advisors for the 4 regions. And for Lagos Federal Territory, that's Lagos State, Lagos Town rather, 2 delegates, 2 advisors. Dr. Dr. Teslim Elias was the delegate for the elders. Latif Jakonde was also delegate, so there were the 2 delegates. I was one of the 2 advisors.
I see.
And we deliberated for a long time. The country was tearing apart. We started sitting about August until October, November 1966. I have all the documents, the speeches, the record of proceedings taken by stenographers, daily proceedings of that conference with me. And I'm speaking from the record.
So what will you remember to have been your key contribution as Federal Commissioner, Works and Housing? At the time, the country was, as you said, actually almost collapsing.
Well, my main achievements looking back. During the Civil War, there wasn't much going on in terms of development. But I met Eko Bridge under construction. The contract was awarded by Baliwa's government. I did not begin it. I always give that credit to Baliwa. Nothing above the ground at the time, so people thought I started it. No. But I met it. Allah be praised, I completed the Eko Bridge with financing from Germany. I was able to negotiate with the contractor and the German government, now government to government negotiation, to continue the bridge from Ijora to Igomo. Well, in terms of highways, I met two north-south routes. That's Lagos, Ibadan, Ilorin, Jeba, Kontagora to Kaduna, Kaduna, Zaria, Zaria to Kano. I made that main route. The second route was was Port Harcourt, Enugu, Oturupo to Makurdi, Makurdi to Kaduna. I left, or had added two more routes, north-south. Warri, Benin, Cotton Carfe, which went to Abuja, Abuja to the rest of the north. And also the second one I added was Calabar, Yola, Maiduguri. I met two major north-south routes. I left four. There was a fifth one, which I always want to credit with General Gawan, because it was he who was quite keen on the fifth one. That's Lagos, that's Badagry, to near Iseyin, to Sokoto. I'm always proud of meeting two north-south and leaving five. You know, east-west, from Ilorin to Umuaran to Lokoja, and also up north there was one from Kaduna across to Maiduguri. There were only under 7,000 federal roads, 7,000 miles of federal roads in '67 when I got to the ministry. When I left in December
67. 74 years.
I left over 20,000 miles of federal roads. So in terms of roads, I'm proud to have left that length of roads, mileage from what I found. At the time I left, most of the roads had just been reconstructed or rehabilitated or were under construction. That was under the 1970-74 development plan. At the time the government was formed in '67, Baliwa's government's development plan was still on, but more or less in limbo. But we were able to complete it at the end of 70. I initiated the right-hand traffic.
The change to right-hand driving.
Change to right-hand traffic.
This was 72?
72, you are correct. 2nd April, moved it from 1st April, so as to avoid April Fool. And many people were critical, even in cabinet. What's wrong with that small boy, the young man? What's in his head? Why change? And I felt that with the Francophone countries on both sides of Nigeria, with right-hand traffic, with the rest of Europe, and also manufacturers of cars, the rest of Europe, apart from Great Britain, on right-hand traffic, the country, Nigeria, must move with the times. But I had great, even in cabinet, but Gawan was my supporter, great supporter. Anyway, we managed to carry that successfully, right-hand traffic. Now, in terms of housing,
yes, which is part of your portfolio.
Housing really is a state matter. And I was keen about federal government intervening in housing construction. And Chief Olo, Finance Minister, the Federal Commissioner, called me and said, Femi, what's your business about housing? And I thought that the old man must be right. It's not a federal matter. It's not on the exclusive legislative list. In all our constitutions from 1954, federal constitutions, you won't find housing, you won't find land on the exclusive legislative list. Under our constitution, there are states matters for states alone. I was impressed by Harold Macmillan of Great Britain when he was housing minister, who promised and fulfilled his promise of building 300,000 housing units per annum.
Yes.
So that's why I took my. So when the chief reminded me that I was a lawyer and not just a radical young man who wanted everything done quickly, I said the chief must be right. I
pulled out from housing.
I removed I withdrew my memo. The housing really should continue to be. I still believe so till today. But I founded the Federal Mortgage Bank. When the president, the new chairman of the Federal Mortgage Bank, we spoke recently, he was surprised when I said I was the founder of Federal Mortgage Bank.
I want to ask you two related questions. Why did you leave before 75 when Gawan's government was overthrown? And why do you think was Gawan's government overthrown?
Okay. Now, our appointment was from 27th May 1967. I have the certificate there. I will show you when you are about to go. So first of all, 30th September 1974, we were all sworn in as federal commissioners to last that long.
That tenure.
All of us. All the 11 of us until Southeast joined. All right, to make it 12. Every state was represented by a commissioner. And incidentally, we were not only ministers with full powers to run our ministries, like under the system. But we were also the legislature. We passed all the decrees, or most of the decrees. That's the Federal Executive Council. We are both the legislature and the executive, which you no doubt think was quite a heavy burden. So Gawan had planned FESTAC, All African Festival of Arts. And FESTAC was planned for 75 or 6. So he asked all of us first to stay on till the end of 74. And at the end of 74, most of us retired. Okay? And those involved in FESTAC actively, Chief Anthony Nauro was Federal Commissioner for Information. Dr. Aripo, External Affairs, he chose to retain 2 or 3 amongst us. And the rest of us retired after an extension from October to December.
So,
Right.
so what is the Gawan question?
Yes.
Why did Gawan ultimately, why was he overthrown?
Why?
Why was he overthrown?
Well, one can think of many reasons. The officers in the war front didn't like, or they didn't take to their colleagues in state houses. Your Excellency, Governor of North Central States, Your Excellency, Southeastern States, Your Excellencies, when they were in the war front fighting. There was that little, that was not little, but that friction, right? That they were bearing the brunt. You were doing the excellencies. That's one aspect of the matter. Another aspect is that some of those who overthrew, led by Muritala Muhammad and Colonel Taiwo and a group of them. Now, some of them resented the participation of some permanent secretaries in the proceedings of the Federal Executive Council. They were called by the public super PAMSECs, you remember. Right. Now, some of them were my own age group and personal friends. To me, I didn't see any super whatever in them, although maybe I was lucky. My first permanent secretary, a complete gentleman, Mr. S.O. Williams, British champion long jump in his days when I was still at secondary school. He hated going to council with me, council meetings. It wasn't part of his remit. Like the typical British officer, his role was in the ministry. I tried to persuade him to stop telling him, saying sir to me. He refused. He was a complete gentleman. I'll have to persuade him to attend cabinet meeting on budget days. Because I said, now you answer all these, some of these questions, so not me. You prepare budget, all of you permanent secretaries. Right? And S.O. Williams was followed by another fine, an another one of the finest you could find, Gray Longe, who became Buhari's
Secretary.
secretary to the government, sort of thing. Gray, he was older than me, but age group. We were friends, so no problem. The so-called super palm sex, my own view about the situation was that after the July coup, 66, Gawan had no advisors to help him or guide him in governance. A soldier man, oh yes, headquarters, army headquarters, whatever they post, but in governance, all of them were Greens. And some of these so-called super palm sects, notably Aida, Asiodu, Damshida, Joda joined the group later, sort of thing. But some people resented...
The soldiers in the cabinet.
The soldiers in the cabinet, no, the chief of staff, the chief of naval staff, Admiral Way, nice man, nice jovial man. The Air Force, first Shitua Lao, who died in a crash, and what's his name now? He's still alive, who took over as chief of air staff from Benue. For just forgotten his name. I'm looking at him now, right? So all of them were green in terms of governance or administration. And to me, there was nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Gawan needed them to help to guide in administration. And they advised when called upon or invited to take part in debates at a cabinet or FEC meetings.
Yeah.
Right. I thought, personally, I see nothing wrong with it. Personally, they were my age group and friends. We get on fine. Asiodu is about the Zuma. Asiodu is the only living super palm set now.
True.
Ahmed Joda, nice man. Ahmed, he died late last year.
So what about the allegation of corruption in the Gawan government, which the Murtala government?
What there was, corruption is corruption. Any system you'll find things not going well. The only after the overthrow of Gawan, before the overthrow, the only member of the Federal Executive Council who was accused of corruption, and there was investigation, and I think the investigation found that there was some element of corruption, was my very good friend, J.S. Taka, who resigned at the invitation of Gawan. Who else for corruption? Nobody.
Yeah.
None of us. Awolowo, he retired after the Civil War. Aminu Kano, clean, good gentleman. None.
Yeah.
In July, after the July coup, I left in December. The new chief of staff, the office, wrote to say we should declare assets declaration form we should complete. not me alone, but also my wife, who incidentally was a senior civil servant. I submitted, filled the form, submitted the thing. The government didn't find a pin. It didn't belong to me in their search for, part of the, let me say this about Asiodu, for example. One of the things they found against him was that his father's property at Asaba, the team which investigated said it belonged to him. His father's property with proper documents. So most of us kneel. The new government found nothing apart from the little incident about, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And maybe one or two governors also were found to be wanting in some respects, right?
Yeah.
But the new administration failed to establish any high-scale or even medium-scale corruption in Gawan's government. Let me quickly add this. When Jaraga was in London as a student in exile, a few visits when I used to go to London about once or twice a year in those days, June, July, then December, January, sort of thing, partly for medical, partly for a change. That's why I studied. Gawan and I used to meet or travel by tube. I had no car. Gawan had no car. I remember the occasion when we both met at the House of Commons. One of these committees invited him, and I was also invited. We took the tube at Westminster together. He to his own house, me to where I stayed.
So is it fair to say that it was when you left government as a lawyer that you made a lot of money?
No, not a lot of money, because the house, Chief Awolowo and I did not occupy government quarters when we were in government. He lived in his own house at Apapa. I lived in my own house, built, which I moved to when I married in 1964 at Yaba. Even though I was Federal Commissioner for Works and Housing. Fridge, it was for me to ask. I didn't ask for fridge. Or no, nothing from the ministry, nothing from Ijora to 97 Wakeman Street. No. Electrical problems, I paid for myself. Water problem, I paid for myself. From my own pocket.
So what I'm saying, you are now in VI, you have been in law practice.
Yeah.
So, but did you find law really more lucrative than government service?
Oh, of course. I mean, law, the practice. If I was able to build a house, I returned in 1960, September. I moved to my own house, which cost me £5,000. £5,000. A story building with a bungalow for my mother at Yaba. So what did I need government assistance for? Now the plots I had some plots. I declared all this to Muritala Obasanjo's government. I didn't develop them until after. So Victoria Land, which was allocated to me, in fact, the government of Shamsi Lawal, who was governor after the coup, That's governor under Muritala Obasanjo. We knew ourselves very well in Lagos. He grew up in both Lagos State. I did not develop part of my plot here until after I left government with bank loan. With bank loan.
Yeah.
With the First Bank
Yeah.
at first. Another plot I had at Ikeja with the UBA loan. Loan.
So let me still go back to politics.
Yeah.
Why didn't you go into full-time politics after you left the in 79, MPN was back. I think you were even deputy legal advisor to MPN.
Yeah.
But you never really went back to elective politics.
No.
No. Why?
No. Because I found politics full of corruption. I joined the NPN because at the time after the death of Muritala and Obasanjo's takeover, Obasanjo took over incidentally Ministry of Works from me.
Yes.
January 75 or thereabouts was appointed until July. We were friends. We remained friends. But the politics at the time and was today is full of corrupt practices. There are some genuine good politicians which Nigerians would be proud of, but there are not many. I found politics as a place where people make money for themselves and render little service to the community. That's not my beginning. That's not part of my training. That's not why I organized demonstrations against governments in England and back home in Nigeria.
Do you mind giving an example of some of these good politicians that you think we should
It would not be proper to mention names. But there are still some who are good politicians. So I witnessed the swearing in of Solude today. It's a good material. I heard his speech in full. I hope he fulfills his promises as he promised to. There are good people around the country, in all parts of the country.
Your daughter recently actually declared, which surprised many people, Khadijat, that she's going to run for president.
Yes.
Was this something you encouraged?
No, she's not prepared for the post. She's not prepared for that sort of position. No, it's not prepared.
But why didn't you discourage her?
With children, you let them do what they want to do and learn when they make mistakes. Then you correct them. But don't teleguide them. Don't teleguide them.
Your wife was also quite active many years ago. She was, even though it's appointive, but she was deputy governor of Lagos State. At one time, actually, she was chair of the interim committee of NRC. Yes. Were you uncomfortable with that kind of role she was playing?
No way. One, Islam creates man and woman for God created man and woman for his purpose. And in the Quran, you'll find Ya Jamaatul Muslimin wal Muslimat wal Mushrikeen wal Mushrikat.
That's right.
Man and woman I don't believe in discrimination. She's a human being. I'm a human being. She had very good trade background. His father was a product of King's College in 1924, along with one of my uncles in class. She joined the civil service. At first, she was a lecturer at the College of Education. And when the college was merged with the University of Lagos, she moved. She later on, she joined the civil service, and so that's Lagos State. Before moving on to federal service, where she was in the cabinet office for quite some time.
Yeah.
So no, she's still very, very active, especially about the place of women, Muslim women in society.
She was, of course, Amira of Form 1.
No, she was one of the founders of Form 1. She's still working on Form 1 till tomorrow.
But you never felt threatened when she became prominent as deputy governor, chairman of a political party?
No way. No way. I gave her the fullest support, as she gave me the fullest support when I was in government.
Was it an arranged marriage between you and her?
No way. No way. I worked hard a little bit. I worked hard. She was, first of all, the family's Lagos society. In those days was one big society. As we say, we knew ourselves. The families interconnected.
Yes.
And Lagos was a small place. For me to trek from my father's house at Idoluo, near Idumota, at a bridge, to Ikoyi, no problem. That was very easy to trek from Lagos to Mushi. I did it. We small young men of our age. So the families, of course, were well known. My wife's immediate elder sister, the same father, the same mother, married my own classmate, A.K. Amo, the famous sprinter, the famous athlete. Amo and I were classmates at King's College. So I knew the family. I knew the family house, sort of thing. We started courting when she was a student at Ibadan. And Chief Akpata, my twin brother, from student days, was the assistant registrar at Ibadan. So I used to, commute from Lagos to Ibadan during our courtship. So no, it's you have to go through the process, customary law of head of family visiting and so on. So it was normal, and we're happy as well.
You are 89 now, sir, and still active. It looks like I've been here in your study and office, and lawyers are coming in. How is it? Do you feel the necessity to continue working at 89, getting to 90, or is something?
It's part of me. It's pleasure to do. I've been involved in writing a few things, apart from my autobiography. I'm concerned about the way Nigeria is being propelled. I wrote a small pamphlet about restructuring. And as I said to you earlier, except that politicians cannot and will not go back to trusted structure. If it must be 36 that we have now, 35 or 36, for goodness sake, let it remain as it is. No more states. Because most of these states are not viable. Can you imagine Sadana of Sokoto marching to Lagos to beg for money from Palewa or Zik. The governors spend most of the year in Abuja lining up for money.
So you want true federalism. Indeed, some people call you a federalist. I don't know what that means.
Well, I spent about 6 months in Abuja when when Obasanjo was in power. You remember the conference which he set up?
Yes, 2014.
I was the leader of the Lagos State delegation.
Is it Obasanjo's conference or Jonathan's? The Obasanjo conference?
Yes.
Yes.
Obasanjo's
Yes.
conference in 05.
Yes. Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time, and we prepared a report, which I thought was better in the circumstances, the best people get. All these little gray areas, we covered them, and successfully. Nothing followed. He did not carry the legislature along with him. When in 2014 was it, 13 or 14?
14.
The governor of Lagos State said I should lead the delegation again. Lagos State.
The Jonathan conference.
That's the Jonathan's conference. I said no. I wasn't going anywhere. I know you are the governor. I'm part of Lagos State. I should normally obey my governor, but this time, no. But we agreed on a formula. I remained the head of the delegation, and his attorney general was doing the day-to-day work in Abuja and reporting to me here, and sort of thing. The recommendations which we made in 05 to me were even better than the one which many members of the public are crying for. Many members of the opposition party, let me say, and now Jonathan. I have the documents for 05 and 14. 05 was even better than 14, but tinkering with the constitution every day is not good for the stability of this country, right? And the error, to my mind, started, surfaced in 1979. I was one of the 50 Nigerians, or 49 because Chief Awolowo declined, who drafted the 79 Constitution. But some of the things which we recommended, like revenue allocation, was ignored. So the Constituent Assembly, which followed in 79, headed by Justice Udodoma, I think, no, F.R.E. Williams, right, didn't recommend what appeared in the Constitution later. For revenue allocation, which we discussed earlier, the provision which the military put in the 75 Constitution was that the decision on revenue allocation should be at the discretion of the National Assembly. It's not National Assembly. The formula 50, 20, 30 for these agricultural commodities, Kano Pyramid, cotton, tin in Jos, cocoa in the west, timber in the west, Midwest. Palm oil. Nigeria was the largest producer of palm oil in those days. We were number 1 in one, and palm kernel We're number one in one, number three in the other, in the world. What's happened to them? To the ground. Because we now have petroleum. And are we going to drink the petroleum? So we've sacrificed agriculture for oil or petroleum, which we now mostly rely upon. These are some of the problems in the politics.
Are you, sir, optimistic about the future of Nigeria?
Nigeria will survive. We've gone through these situations too often. Nigeria will break up in the 60s before the coup. And we had the coup, military coup. It didn't break up. Nigeria will break up after Shagari's government fell in the hands of Buhari, General Buhari. Nigeria survived. Hiccups, 99. Abacha, with his own dictatorial instincts, president for life. Well, whether it's CIA who took his life and Abiola's life or not, is still open to debate. My good friend, General Obasanjo, who says he's a Democrat, fought for a third term. Thank God he failed.
Okay.
Right? Nigeria survived. Nigeria will still survive.
Thank you. I must say that we appreciate the insight and the examples of a well-lived life that you have been able to share with us. And viewers, I've been speaking to Alhaji Femi Okunu, who, as you have heard, at 89, is still going strong. And I wish you join me to wish him long life and more service to our fatherland. Thank you.